Well, good afternoon. Senator Flake and I are just received extensive briefings from all of those who've been involved in this noble effort to make the necessary arrangements in light of the terrible tragedy that has taken place and afflicted not only our fellow citizens here, but throughout Arizona and the nation. I just returned from spending 4th of July in Afghanistan with our troops there, and every one of them send their thoughts and prayers to the families and citizens of Prescott, Yavapai County, and Arizona. We want to thank so much all who have been involved in this effort, and it's very difficult to name all of them, but Sheriff Masher and Mayor Kuykendall and Fire Chief Dan Frejo and Speaker Andy Tobin, all of the firefighters, the Professional Firefighters Association, and all of those who knew and loved the Granite Mountain hotshot crew. We believe that, also, we are very pleased that the Vice President of the United States, Joe Biden, will be here on Tuesday to take part in the memorial service that is taking place. It's characteristic of Joe Biden, who is a fine and wonderful man who I have already talked to. We will be investigating, and all of the relevant agencies will be investigating the causes of this tragedy, and obviously Senator Flake and I are not prepared to draw any specific conclusions, except to say that as far as we can tell, that this terrible tragedy was not something that was preventable. A freak movement of wind shift that took place is the primary cause. And I want to again thank everyone who's been involved. I'd like to make a couple of comments about a larger issue here, and that is the whole issue of fires in the state of Arizona. In the last 10 years, 1/4 of the forest land in Arizona has been consumed by forest fires. And we, Senator Flake in the House and now in the Senate, and I have been working for years, as I was with Senator Kyle, in trying to create conditions that do not allow these fires to cause such great damage. And they have to do with four Forest Fires Restoration Initiative, which we need to have in order to clear our forests. We know that in the olden days that fires just swept through and didn't do the damage that they do now. And we need to clear these forests, and we need to make it so that the damage that is done by fires is not as catastrophic as what we just saw. There is a shortage now of tankers. The aging tankers have being retired. The Forest Service fleet once included 44 large tankers in 2002. It went down to 33, and last year there were 18. In the Defense Authorization Bill this last year, we put in a provision to transfer more aircraft tankers, large aircraft, to be used by the Forest Service. That process is going on. And over the last 10 years, a total of 22 people have died in air tanker crashes. And so we have written to the Department of Defense before this happened, Senator Flake and I have, so that this transfer of aircraft can be expedited, because the aging aircraft will give our Forest Service our decreasing ability to fight forest fires. Finally, I'd like to thank, not finally, but I'd like to thank everybody who's been involved in their charitable donations and their efforts to help assuage the grief of the families. We believe strongly that this is the deadliest forest fire in Arizona history. It's the worst wildland firefighter casualty in the United States in 80 years. So we know that this represents a disaster. And we know that the governor is working on a declaration of emergency, and Senator Flake and I will be doing everything we can to see that there is a declaration by the administration of an emergency, which would then qualify this situation for all kinds of federal assistance, which will be needed. Senator Flake.
Well, thank you, Senator McCain. Let me just say first, having grown up in Snowflake, in a small town in northern Arizona, to the magnitude of this kind of tragedy on a small town is just enormous. And I can't begin to express my condolences, and on behalf of the two of us and every elected official everywhere. It's just been a tough thing to see, and it will be tough for a long time. And as Senator McCain said, to see the outpouring of generous support and donations and help for the families of the victims, I know that they appreciate it, and want to thank all of you for that. With regard to the long term, just coincidentally, just a week before the fire, we had a hearing on the Senate side in the Senate Resources Committee where we questioned Chief Tidwell of the Forest Service on stewardship contracts and timber contracts, and every effort we can get to clean this fuel load in our forest and try to save these forests and cut down the incidence of these kind of fires. I spoke to Chief Tidwell just a couple of days ago. I got a call from Ron Wyden, the chairman of the committee, anxious to do whatever he can, and all of us on a bipartisan basis, to make sure that we move legislation that will help us save our forests and save our communities and save our firefighters from this kind of incident in the future. But again, I just want to thank all of those who've given so much, and the officials here. You see Andy Tobin here, probably hasn't slept in a week. And the governor and Sheriff Masher and Mayor Kuykendall and everyone who's done so well. This community is very fortunate to have such good local elected officials, and our state is as well. So thank you for having us here.
We'll take your question, but I just want to add one other point, and that is that Senator Flake and I have been very impressed with the degree of coordination between the state, federal, and local authorities. And we want to thank the Forest Service, who has been involved in this as well, and so many others who didn't necessarily have to be involved but have volunteered their services and been so helpful in addressing this tragedy. Questions?
Senator, did you guys take a tour of the fire today?
No, we did not. We think there's too much going on right now. As you know, they have not been to all the homes yet, and it is not totally clear whether everyone was evacuated or voluntarily left. We will be going, but at this particular moment, I think it would just impede the effort that particularly the sheriff is making to make sure that no one stayed in their homes. Pardon me? Yeah. Yes, we did have the opportunity of meeting with the families, and it's a moving and gripping experience. And you know, politicians not very often are at a loss for words, but it's hard to express the sorrow that we feel and all Arizonans feel.
Senator, how will Department act Forest Service wildland and fire management budget this season?
Say that again. There was some.
I'm glad you mentioned that. I thank you for mentioning that, because if sequestration takes place, I've got a couple of numbers here. If sequestration takes place, the Forest Service and Department of Interior are facing about $115 million in wildlife suppression cuts, not just cuts to their budget, but $115 million cut in their wildlife suppression capabilities. And as Senator Flake just mentioned, the Forest Service chief testified that agencies will hire 500 fewer firefighters this year, and trucks will be reduced from 950 to 900. The Forest Service says it can still operate with high levels of initial attack on fires, but it is clear that we are facing cuts that will reduce the capability of the Forest Service and in particular to combat these fires. And we all know that the Southwest is in a drought and has been in a drought for a number of years. And we have seen an increase in forest fires. So I would urge all of our citizens to make sure that the Congress, with the support of the President, acts to reverse this sequestration. Any more?
Senator McCain, 9 News with Brian Williams. You just came back from Afghanistan. Your thoughts on the latest events in Egypt?
Are there of great concern, the events that have just taken place with the military takeover and the removal of the president? The president was freely elected. The president has mismanaged his office, obviously, and that reaction we've seen from millions of the Egyptian people has been really quite remarkable. And I've thought long and hard about this, but I believe that we have to suspend aid to the Egyptian military because the Egyptian military has overturned the vote of the people of Egypt. And we cannot set a precedent, which frankly let me put it this way, we cannot repeat the same mistakes that we made at other times in our history by supporting the removal of freely elected governments. And so I believe that the aid has to be suspended, that the Egyptian military has to set a timetable for elections and a new constitution, and then we should evaluate whether to continue the aid or not. And I am aware that by suspending aid to the Egyptian military, which is the only stable institution in Egypt, we are risking further problems in the Sinai and in other areas of cooperation with the Egyptian military. I say that with great reluctance, but the United States of America, I think, must learn the lessons of history, and that is we cannot stand by without acting in cases where freely elected governments are unseated by the military arm of those nations.
Senator Flake, when you met with the families, do you know how many of the families you met with, and what was their message to you? What were their concerns that they had? And what did they want from you? Anything?
Well, we went around. I'm not sure that we touched base with each of the families, each of us, but I think they have the concerns that any family at this point would. There's obviously long-term financial concerns and other things that will come to the fore, but that's not really what we heard. It was, how do we make do? How do our kids go on without their dad? I mean, that's the stuff.
And as far as an emergency declaration, what kind of finances would that provide? Would that be specifically for the families or for the fire departments, or what would be?
It's a wide range of assistance from the federal government, from home loans to family relief to the assistance, opening all kinds of avenues to different kinds of assistance that could be provided by the federal government. We'd be glad to give you a list, but it is a very large amount of assistance that both families and state and local authorities would receive, including reimbursement for certain functions of government, which are obviously very important.
Senators, you're speaking about aid coming from a lot of different places, but what are your offices or you yourselves doing specifically to help the victims of the Yarnell fire?
Well, I'll just say one thing that I've done, and Senator McCain probably has or will, is there's a Club 100 that helps victims, the firefighters. I sent an email appeal to my entire list urging people to give. And my understanding is that a lot has been donated to that group, and so we'll do what we can in that regard, and just to encourage people to help, because there are significant resources that the federal government is bringing to bear in the state, but still there are a lot of gaps that won't be filled, and we'll do what we can to encourage people voluntarily, and a lot of that's been done already.
Let me continue that answer. One of Senator Flake's and my first priority to get this emergency declaration as quickly as possible. We're in contact with a broad variety of agencies, and we are appealing directly to the President of the United States to make this declaration as quickly as possible. That alone is a very key and important element. Now, the governor has to ask for it first. So we are being ready as soon as the governor issues this declaration that we will move forward with the federal government. We are telling all of our friends and constituents through email and Facebook about contributions. We are trying to do what we can to comfort the families. We are trying to make sure that the American people are as aware as we are of this tragedy, and I am confident, as the American people are, that they will do everything that they can to help and assist these families, whether by finance or financial reason or others. And that's our job, and we are pleased and proud to do it, and we wish we could do more.
Will the two of you attend the Tuesday service?
Yes.
Senator, what do you think of the president's?
I know that Congressman Gosar has some legislation in the House side to address some of these fire dangers. Will you be supporting that? Will you be introducing other legislation in the Senate side? And
We have already passed legislation, including that for the Forest Restoration Initiative, including other legislation, but obviously we need more and more rapid efforts, because what we are doing now would take 20 or 30 years to do the forest clearing as quickly as it is now planned. One of the keys to it is to have private companies come in and clear the small trees, and they've got to be assured that they're going to make money out of that. And right now there is a group that is trying to locate up around Flagstaff, which would engage in this. Look, there's not enough tax dollars for the government to do it by itself, and we have to get private enterprise in who will do the clearing and the cutting and be able to turn what they do into products that they can sell. That really is the key element here. Do you want?
Yes, with regard to that specific legislation, I believe I sponsored that when he introduced it in the House. I'm just waiting to see the language before we take it up in the Senate. But we've both introduced legislation and passed legislation with regard to healthy forest, the For-Fry initiative, and other stewardship contracting to, as Senator McCain said, not just allow the federal government to go in to clean, but economic interests to go in and do the same.
Senator, what do you make of the president's decision to send the vice president and not himself on Tuesday?
Vice President, as is characteristic of the Vice President of the United States, when he heard about this, he volunteered to come. And we are very grateful that the Vice President is here. And to me, I think it reflects the administration's concern and sorrow over this tragedy, and we're grateful for it.
I just want to say, the President made a number of calls to local officials here and others and family members. And the Vice President reached out to both Senator McCain and myself days ago, and we're just very grateful that he is coming.
All right. Thank you very much.